I'm 90 years old. There's one regret that never loosened its grip, no matter how much time passed or how full my life looked from the outside. I'm telling you this now because there isn't much later left. Not for me, anyway. And because some truths don't ask to be admired. They just want to be said before they disappear with the person who carried them. Most days are quiet now. The house is too big for one person, but too small for memories that keep showing up uninvited. I wake early, not because I need to, but because sleep doesn't hold me the way it used to. I've outlived most of the people who knew me when I was becoming myself. That does something to a person. It strips away the performance. What's left is what mattered, and what didn't. When I look back, the regret isn't about a single bad decision. It's about all the reasonable ones. I was in my 20s when life started moving fast. Work came first because it had to. That's what I told myself. I had a decent job, not glamorous but steady, the kind of job people nodded approvingly. I married young. We weren't wildly romantic, but we were good together. We talked about practical things, rent, groceries. What kind of future made sense? I thought love was something you maintained by being responsible. Every morning I left before the sun was fully up, coffee in a chipped mug, a kiss on the cheek that lasted just long enough to count. I'll make it up to you this weekend, I'd say, and I meant it. Weekends filled themselves with errands, fixing things around the house, catching up, resting. There was always something that felt more urgent than sitting still together. Years passed that way. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly stacking on top of each other. I missed dinners more often than I noticed. Missed the way conversations shortened. Missed the moment when being together became more about logistics than curiosity. We still loved each other, I think. But love, unattended, changes shape. When the kids came, I told myself this was the season for sacrifice. That one day, when things slowed down, we'd have time again. Time to talk, time to travel, time to sit without looking at the clock. I believed time was something you earned. I went to their school events when I could. Not all of them, but enough to feel like a good parent. I worked late so they'd have choices later. They grew up grateful, polite, independent. They call on holidays, sometimes in between. That's not the regret either. The regret is subtler. It's the way I postponed presence. The way I treated closeness like a reward for future effort, instead of something that needed daily attention. I remember one night in my 40s. My wife was sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, waiting for me to finish something on my briefcase. She asked, "Do you have a minute?" I said, "After this." She nodded. She always nodded. By the time I closed the briefcase, she'd gone to bed. That moment never announced itself as important, but it never left me. The turning point didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It came with a diagnosis. Illness rearranges priorities very quickly. Suddenly there were appointments, medications, long silences where words didn't know where to go. We talked more then, about memories, about fears, about things we'd never said because there was always tomorrow. But tomorrow is not as patient as we think. She died on an ordinary morning, the kind you assume will repeat. I held her hand and tried to compress decades of unspoken attention into a few final hours. It doesn't work like that. Afterward, people told me I'd been a good husband. I nodded and accepted it because it was easier than arguing. The house changed after she was gone. Not just quieter, smaller, as if rooms themselves had opinions about who should still be there. Years went by. I stayed busy longer than I needed to. Habit is powerful, even when it no longer serves a purpose. Friends drifted. Some died. Some moved. Conversations shortened again. This time there was no one waiting at the kitchen table. What can't be fixed is not the past itself. It's the assumption that I'd get another chance to show up differently. You don't get a rehearsal, and you don't get to feel the weight of your choices until you can no longer change them. If I'm speaking to you now, it's not to warn you. Warnings sound like noise when you're young or busy, or convinced you're doing the right thing. I just want you to know how easy it is to confuse responsibility with distance. How normal it feels to delay intimacy without realizing you're practicing absence. The people in your life are not background music. They don't wait quietly while you finish the important part. One day, the important part ends, and all that remains is who you were present with. I don't regret working hard. I don't regret providing. I regret assuming love would understand my absence without cost. Now, at 90, my days are measured differently. By light through the window. By whether the phone rings. I'm not bitter, just honest. There were good years, real joy, laughter that mattered, but there was also a tenderness I kept postponing until it ran out of time. If this meant something to you, sit with it for a moment, not to change your life, just to notice it while it's still happening. As for me, I'll finish this and make some tea. The afternoon will pass, like it always does, and I'll be grateful for what I had, and quietly mourn what I thought could wait.